Hello, and my name is Michelle Pierre-Farid, the National Senior Executive Director for Strategic Partnerships and Alumni Impact, and representing Cohort 3. So I am going to turn it over to you, Ron, because we want to have all these little tidbits. I see great questions that people have in the chat. And so we are going to have you start us off.
Thanks, Michelle. And it's always good to convene with the New Leaders family and to go from my role at New Leaders for 7 years as being on the National Recruitment Admissions team. So I interviewed a number of folks, including Paul. Paul, I still remember your final selection day, not only in New Orleans, but Charlotte, because Ron never forgets. No, kidding. Just really exciting to have Paul and Daniela to be able to hear from folks on the ground and what you're doing, considering, I think, is a national crisis right now with teachers, right? In terms of what I'm seeing and what data seems to be pointing towards is that the beginning of an exodus and potentially even more of an exodus as we hit fall. So my leading question, and either of you can chime in to start and then we can ping pong it back and forth for a good dialogue, is we know so many teachers and regular workers are leaving for various reasons, such as higher pay and more flexibility. What have either of you seen in your school to mitigate the concern around higher pay and flexibility, especially since teachers have to be with the children? What ways have you come up to be flexible with something that I understand reasonably the school leaders are in control of, which is the master schedule? So Daniela, Paul, who would like to jump in?
Paul, do you want me to go first?
Please do.
Okay. Thank you for the question and thank you for having me on this panel. I'm really honored to be able to be here representing Cohort 12 and speaking about the work that we've done at DC Bilingual. We've worked really hard on this. And so a few things that I'd like to share that have seemed to work so far are making sure that personal time is granted for all people when they ask it, and making sure we do everything in our power to make it possible for staff to be able to take time off, and having everyone else who is at school cover for them, right? So this means that, people who are coaches or instructional specialists or APs or principals or myself, there may be times when classrooms need us and we just have to, it's a new culture and a new way of operating our school where we recognize everyone has to do way more than their assigned roles and responsibilities to cover all of the bases, especially those of teachers, because we need to grant them the space and the time for them to take care of themselves and their personal needs, no questions asked. We have at school 3 school subs who are always working to support coverage. We have co-teachers in every classroom. So if the subs can't be in that particular classroom, there is another lead teacher who should be able to lead the class on that given day. We have all of our special education students obviously have their one-to-ones if needed. We're fully staffed with our paraprofessionals, assistants, sub, recess support, and all of the times in the day, we are basically overstaffed so that if ever we need to pull somebody to cover another area, we can do so without running the risk of not having coverage for that particular time in the day. We also run our own in-house after-school program, and that means that we have a lot of part-time staff who are able to be pulled in to support during the daytime, who are really wanting more hours in the day. So it's a win-win situation where they want more hours, they want more time working, and we get to ask them to spend more time working if needed. We also have most schools have a half-day PD day, which is a day where you do professional development. We've made that a virtual option for all staff not forever, but this school year. And so that means a lot of our staff can go home at like when the children are dismissed, half of the day on Fridays, they get to go home, be with their families, connect virtually for the PD time that they have. That goes through until 4 p.m. on Friday. So from like 1 to 4, they can be at home. And we've adjusted PD schedule to make it so that all the virtual PDs can happen as successfully as they would have happened in person. And then the other thing we extended, which I know most schools had a limited window of time to offer this, but we've extended it until we absolutely don't need it anymore, but it's the COVID leave time, which is if anybody feels like they may be sick, they have any symptoms, or if they have their kids with symptoms, or their kids can't go to daycare for something unforeseen that happened at their child's daycare, or any issues regarding COVID, we grant our staff the opportunity to take that time without it coming out of their personal time. So those are just a few examples.
Thank you, Daniela. I'll just add a couple of other ideas that we've been working on at Charlotte Lab, and in particular our lower campus. As Daniela said, it's a pleasure to be here and join all of you. And I've just taken notes about what Daniela shared. So there are a couple of things I'll try in my current school as a result of this knowledge. So one thing that I thought about as Ron read that question is just the idea of like always seeking to find flexibility where you can find it. And so sometimes like teachers are able to come up with their own ideas around flexibility. And so oftentimes I'll put the question back on them, like, is there something, that we can do or I can do to make more flexibility for you in our work environment? And that's led to things such as like admin and support staff cover all recesses this year, so that teachers not only have a planning block, but a 30-minute wellness block that the staff is able to use for phone calls, lunch, taking a walk themselves. Another has been always seeking to say yes, similar to what Daniela shared, this idea of like if someone's asking for leave time, 99% of the time it's granted, and we work to, again, have myself or another administrator cover that block. So this year I've had the privilege of teaching Mandarin, which I don't speak Mandarin, and I've had the privilege of teaching Spanish across several grade levels, and I am not fluent in Spanish. So it's been an interesting process, but I think what we have found is that our teachers recognize that like we as support team members and leadership team members are in the work with them. And I think that goes a long way in helping our staff feel like, although we may not be able to offer the pay or the exact flexibility they're seeking, like that they're with people who see them and validate them in the work that they're doing each day, and have also not only previously walked the walk, but are willing to walk the walk currently on a day in and day out basis.
I feel like there's a treasure trove of strategies here, Daniela and Paul, that you've both outlined here. And I'm going to go, I remember running the case follow-up room in the final selection day for the Spine Principles program. So I'm going to ask like a case follow-up-esque follow-up question, either for Daniela or Paul. What of the strategies you outlined was most difficult to implement? And can you walk us through briefly, we have 10 minutes, right? Probably like the 3-minute synopsis of how you implemented it. I'm trying to think ahead. These are great strategies, but we know context matters, right? And so I want to pull some of the context of how you implemented a lot of these strategies, one of these strategies.
Daniela, can I jump in here and then you can definitely follow up? The kind of seeking to say yes aspect is something that we've tried to do in being creative as it relates to, again, asking others for their opinions, outsourcing to our network staff to identify people who can come into the building, whether it's our head of talent, our head of HR, we have people that have been supporting us with COVID testing. And so it's always being willing to look outside of the normal, day-to-day that what we've been used to or accustomed to in the past. We've also, sought ways, especially now that the pandemic has decreased slightly in our specific metro area, ways to bring families in so that families can take on some of the day-to-day, whether it's, serving our breakfast and lunch so that our campus associate can go and do a coverage when we're trying to say yes to a staff member who needs to go with their child to Spain to do a soccer tournament. So again, it's those kind of techniques of always trying to be creative and innovative in how we resolve, what could be an easy no and seeking an answer that's a more appreciated yes, and one that helps our staff feel like they can not only be the professional that we need them to be, but also the family person or the individual human that they need to be outside of work as well.
And I can just chime in. It's very similar to what Paul shared. I think that this idea of being kind to one another and demonstrating it from the top down is really, really important. Like my principal yesterday was feeling sick, and she says, "I don't think I can come in." And I said, "I hope you're okay. Take all the rest you need. We're going to miss you. Let us know how you feel during the middle of the day so that we can plan if you need to take an additional day off." And then there were a few people in that chat when that was sent. And then throughout the day, there were literally 3 or 4 more texts asking, "How are you feeling? Are you okay? Did you get some rest?" Like, there's this genuine feel of like the person matters, their wellness matters. And in a little bit, I'll talk about our wellness focus for the year. But it's that I have to model that, right? I care genuinely about people at the school, and I have to model that we've got it covered. Don't worry about it. Take your time, rest. And we do everything we need to behind the scenes to make sure we really got it covered. And that's everywhere. And so we also have a very unique community because most of us have been here for a long time. And I personally am committed to making this work for people who are like moms and dads and who have responsibilities that go beyond the work responsibilities. So I started at this school 13 years ago. I was like in my early 20s, and I didn't have kids. And the way that I worked was around the clock. And now I have kids, and I need to have time for my own children, and I need to have boundaries. I learned how to create boundaries, but how to still be incredibly committed to the work, and how to model for everyone that you can be a wife, you can be a mom, you can have home responsibilities and still have jobs like these that require so much time and attention and commitment. So I need to be able to model that for my employees, because if I can't model it for my employees, then I'm not really doing what I say our community is, setting everybody up to be able to do. So that culture of, yes, we have to make it happen, that people get the opportunity to take the time they need when they need it, and that we really truly prioritize that.
Ron, can I add 2 other things to that?
Please do.
Similar to something Daniela shared, we have made a choice this year on several occasions to allow our staff members to bring their children to work, like if their daycares or if their child's school was closed, if they don't attend our campus. And so we have a phenomenal campus operations manager that's at the front, and we have a space that those young children could be and doing activities. And again, it's not perfect by any means, but it is something else that shows our staff that we value them. Many of them have, asked, "Can I come to work?" And we're like, "Yes, you're welcome to come to work. We'll work with you to find, a space for your child to be safe, secure, and engaged in some form of learning or enrichment." The second thing, and again, Daniela shared something similar about her Fridays. We don't have a half-day option, but one thing that we've done is sought to, again, decrease the amount of time staff has to stay after school or after hours. And one of those has been at least twice a month, like recording a staff meeting. I'll record the staff meeting, and teachers can listen to that on their commute home, so that it's more of like a mini PD or a mini FYI that folks can listen to, versus needing to be in the building. It's time that they're already committed to something else, but they can do the pieces that we need to convey during that time. Thanks for letting me jump in there, Ron.
No worries, Paul. Well, Daniela, I want to ask you this next question, since you said something around wanted to talk more about what wellness systems you've built at your school. And so this ties into my next question. So I'm going to give this data point. Around 93% of teachers have shared they would like more support around is mental health. And I would also say wellness is very much interrelated. It's not really much the same thing. Daniela, can you talk about what you built in your school?
Yes, absolutely. And I had, I was fortunate enough to be interviewed by new leaders, and there is a blog post that is inclusive of some of this information. So I'd be happy to put that in the chat if folks want to take a look at it. So I'll talk a little bit about that now as well. But we need, at the beginning of the year, I had trouble being a leader. I struggled with, how can I possibly be a leader right now of a school that's been going through so much, everybody has been going through so much trauma, so much sadness, that people have lost so many loved ones. We've been away working remotely for the past year and a half. I had to think, I was really worked up over, I don't know how to do this job. I don't know how to bring a community together. And it seems like there's so much pain that I'm not quite sure I know how to do this job. And so I had to do some soul searching. And then it came to me that really the one thing everyone can come together about on the topic that can join us all is this need for wellness, is this need for each of us are on this journey to become, healthier and better physically, socially, emotionally, mentally. And that we do have in common. So the idea with this was, how can I bring a community together with that as an element that brings us all, that unites us all. And that launched into this beautiful theme for the year around wellness of our community. And again, and it's focusing on overall wellness, mental wellness being one of them. We openly share, and I lead by example, the fact that many of us have our own therapists, we have our own coaches, we have our own, mentors that support us with our feelings and experiences and processing anything that we might be going through. And so I think that the majority of my staff does speak to an expert and does have an outlet outside of folks at school with whom they think and they talk with. And then we've been really intentional about our efforts to have wellness be the theme for the year. And when I mean intentional, I mean, we talk about it every opportunity we can. I include it in my weekly newsletters to my community. I report out, I have a head of school goal that has metrics and criteria that I'm going to be held accountable for fulfilling by the end of the year. We created committees, one for staff, one for students, to review proposals that other stakeholders submit, anybody could submit, that include initiatives we can adopt as a school to help promote more wellness for the adults or students. We fundraised for wellness. So the Giving Tuesday campaign was completely centered on bringing in wellness opportunities to our community. We made in 24 hours, I think we made about $40,000. It was crazy. That theme really hit home with so many people and so many members of our community that they were really excited to support it. And then this idea of budgeting and making sure that in our budget, we're really also showing that is a school priority, and we're making very intentional decisions on how all of the line items in the budget are going to support overall wellness of the school community and the benefits packet that we offer. We even, we provide food in-house, healthy food in-house for all of our staff, no cost to them, and things like that. There's various elements of our school budget that center on thinking through what our staff need, what they want to see, and making it happen for them in that way.
Paul, did you want to add anything from what you've done for wellness as something that's threaded through the entire line of how your school operates during COVID?
Yeah, I don't know that we have anything quite as detailed as Daniela has shared, but I will say, just giving both students and staff and even families like opportunities to have like really authentic conversations that oftentimes include tears and tissue. Like it is a part of, I think, the general healing process that like we as a school community, both adults and children, are going through. And so our students have an embedded SEL block every day called advisory, in which they have it's a small group of students with an adult, and they go through techniques around how to be better listeners, to how to be better advocates, to more practical things like how do I learn to share with my friends in the group in second grade, for example. And staff likewise has the opportunity to connect with our in-house counselor that serves our students, but we also have office hours with staff whenever at least once a month, where they're able to come and join one of the administrators and have conversations about what's working, what's not working for them. And then basically it's a problem solving time where we work together. So I would not go as far as to say, again, it's exactly mental health, but I think it gets at the heart of addressing what is the angst and the concern that some of our staff faces, both personally and professionally.
I have to say, in reflection, Danielle and Paul, hearing you both give these answers, right, is this modeling of deep personal leadership, modeling the way. I remember some of the new leaders' language I remember seeing in frameworks, once you're in the principal seat, as well as just systemic and organizational leadership, right? It's one thing to say that you care, but if you have a culture of caring, and Danielle, I love what you said about building the budget and looking for opportunities also for folks to come, Giving Tuesday. I think sometimes what I see from afar is that the analogy that I've given and what's happening in schools for folks who don't understand how schools really run is that how schools are operating right now, with there being in a number of school settings, not all, but a number of knowing that you don't know what your staffing is going to look like that day, just creates so many domino effects that folks don't understand, right? And so I think the question I'm going to riff on, this is a new question as I'm hearing this conversation, is obviously in modeling wellness and modeling support, you can't do everything. That's hard to admit. So I'm curious, Danielle and Paul, what are the trade-offs on the approaches that you're doing right now to make sure that teachers and all adults in the building are taken care of, and students and families are being taken care of, and students are learning? What are the trade-offs? What are you giving up that you're being explicit about with your school communities?
Paul, I can answer this first. I miss dearly parents in the building, open door policy, the community in the building, people being here. I miss it so much, and we are giving that up. Right now, running a school within a pandemic, parents drop off at the door, they pick up at the door. We have a car pickup, we have a by foot pickup. No one sets foot in the building. There's this element of like keeping pods separate still. Like we just moved into like optional mask wearing outside, but in the building, everybody's still wearing masks. So we don't see each other's faces. We don't smile at each other. We don't give each other hugs. I had spent before this year a significant amount of time talking to family members, hosting people at the building, being kind of like this, kind of PR person and welcoming everyone in and making sure people felt okay on any given day. And that was a big part of my job. And now I don't have that. All of that got taken away. So now I have to like work via Zoom meetings and some calls and like emails, a lot of emails on how we have to work harder at connecting with our community and at bringing these initiatives that are here to promote wellness. We're going to do them as well as we can, keeping in mind that we're still unable to see each other's smiles and hug each other and be in the building, roaming the halls and in the classrooms. And it's a little bit, it's awkward, and it's not as warm and friendly as it was before. So we've given that up to be able to focus more intentionally on the factors that we need to focus on to support the school community this year.
I would just add, and again, I hate to even say this in a group of educators and leaders in the new leaders community, because I carry a lot of guilt around this year as it relates to, things that we have been forced to give up or trade off. And, that has been, I think, both for our leadership team and for our staff, one of the hardest parts of the year is having to make tough choices that don't really align always with like what we think is best, but like what we know is needed in the moment. And I think really the first quarter of the year and part of the second, we traded academics. We postponed some academic work to make sure school culture work was the front and center, and student and staff culture was front and center. And so that meant that we spent time like regrouping frequently as a staff. We altered our master schedule, time and time again to make it work. We spent more time on SEL work and counseling and behavior supports and systems, and much less around interventions and observation in classrooms and making sure teachers receive feedback. Those were the things that took the back seat in terms of making sure that our students and staff were ready after approximately a year and a half to come back into a building. Many of our students, second graders in particular, had never seen our particular building before. So it was like, or had never spent significant time in our particular building. And so it was about, what does it mean to be a kid in a school again? What does it mean to be a teacher in a school again? What are the things that we hold as shared values, and how do we, support the lab way, and everything from like having a lab line to, what does it mean to, use your computer appropriately in the school building when we were doing, different activities. So again, I think it was, a lot of guilt is the word that keeps coming to my mind. I mean, I'll share with you on this call, like even 2 months ago, like I had a tear session in one of my meetings with staff, from the sense that like, again, we have worked, tirelessly. And even in doing that, like there are things that we have not gotten right and things that have not always worked in the way we wanted them to. And so we continue to look at our children and our staff, first as people and humans in need of like the whole development. And then we try to piece everything else together after that, academically and otherwise.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Daniela. I've got 2 more questions teed up, and certainly I think there might be some Q&A or other things that might be starting to populate the chat. I'm gonna shift gears because there's certainly a lot you can do as a school leader within your context. And there's certain policies, either from the state or your local municipality, that might be constraining you that you have not yet talked about. And I'm sure there are tons. I want to elevate. I want to pretend like if you were to be able to talk to whoever creates the local ed policy in your city, in your district, etc., right, in your area, what's 1 or 2 policies that you would advise strongly in your school leader seat? This has got to go, or this needs to be added, right? That this is just getting in the way fundamentally of us being able to do what's best for our school community.
Paul, I can start and maybe you can add on. I have lots of responses I could give you, but one of the things that I recognized coming out of the wellness initiatives that we set forth. So we have a wellness committee that focuses on adult wellness, so like staff and caregiver wellness. And then we have one that focuses on student wellness and how to continue to add more initiatives to support student wellness. For both, the way that we ran it was we elicited proposals on wellness initiatives from anyone who basically wanted to suggest a proposal or submit a proposal. And for both sides, the winning proposals were ones where choice was given to the people who would who were right there in front of the groups, the stakeholder groups. For example, when we were the staff wellness committee chose that the funds that we were choosing to disperse should go to our affinity groups, which every member of our staff community is a part of an affinity group. They select which affinity group they would like to be a part of. It could be sexual orientation, it could be racial, it could be native country, it could be a variety of ways that they choose to come together and to form an affinity group. And the winning proposal was the one that gave affinity groups some funds to go do something together. And that would allow that affinity group to bond with each other, to be creative with the use of funds, to go experience something that would bring them together and give them a sense of unity. Similarly, if you look at, and there was other examples of how those funds that I'm happy to talk more about if people have questions or can email me to ask more about how that all unfolded. But for students, the winning proposals were ones that gave the teachers an additional allowance for classroom spending, so that the teachers would know what the students could benefit from having a little bit more of, and then use that to support their experience, the kids' experience with what they thought would be better received by the students, needed by the students, or wanted by the students. So when we think about like funding and we think about opportunities for schools, going back to your question, I think it's really important to be thoughtful that every school community has its own set of priorities and has its own set of challenges and needs. And I would love for there to be more opportunities for policies to account for that and to provide funding that goes to the general, like, I don't know, needs of a school, based on what their challenges are, what they're facing, what they know their community needs. And this idea of choice I think would be really, really well received. Because we're all such unique school communities that need various different things. So I think that's my main response to the question.
Paul?
Yeah, I would just add briefly, I think 2+ years ago, like most schools, at least in our community, and I think across our state and probably our country, were woefully underfunded as it related to mental health supports and counseling services. And certainly as we are either continuing through the pandemic or hopefully at some juncture coming out of it, we're seeing kind of the wreckage that has been left, the carnage that's been left as a result of a lack of those resources. And I think, if I could speak to a policymaker, would be that like we have to double down and triple down on our investments around mental health and social emotional supports and funding in our schools. And I don't think it can be seen as an either or for the current academic or staffing needs. It has to be in addition to. And so as we think about plans that our policymakers put into place to rescue our economy at different points, I almost think that that's where we are as a institution of schools and educators and families across the country, is we need a rescue plan as it relates to ensuring that mental health and social emotional personnel and resources and systems are more readily and easily accessible to anyone that needs them or wants them. And that again, I intentionally use the word rescue plan because I think that is in some ways where we are. I really appreciate hearing from Daniela and what she's done at her school. But the reality is for us to do some of that work in our school, like we're already, under-resourced in personnel. And so we have to have more to be able to do some of those things. And I want to continue to figure out how we're innovative with what we have. But at the same time, we I think have to draw a line in the sand that like there is a limit on what any one community of educators and families can do without adequate supports, resources, personnel, and funding to really see us through, I think, this crisis that we're currently in.
And in response to Paul, I completely agree. And I think that my job, I became a principal, but then I needed to step into more of an executive leader role, right? So head of school is my title. And with that came fundraising. And it's almost like 70% of my time is spent fundraising. And it's fundraising for the areas of our school that we don't already have funding for. And so to your point, yes, absolutely. If we could have funding policies written to support mental health and the wellness of our staff, of our students, of our caregivers, like that would be an enormous amount of my job currently that I wouldn't have to necessarily spend looking for funds to support it. It would be funded, hopefully by federal government or local government funds. So I think that, to your point, absolutely, that's my role right now is the role that is focusing on getting us funds to be able to do that work that most schools can't offer for their communities.
Well, I want to start wrapping up and leaving some time for Q&A from other members of our audience here. So I don't know how we want to do this, Michelle or Nicole, but I don't know if folks want to put it in the chat or if there's a way to highlight folks, but I'll leave it to y'all to figure out what those logistics are to see if there are questions to ask Paul and or Daniela with our remaining 5 minutes in this section.
Yeah, so thank you, Ron. And again, this has been, I've been like taking notes feverishly as we're listening to both of you speak about the work that you have done. We will at this time take questions from the audience. I do believe there was a couple of people that posted in the chat. And so if you would like to come on or come off mute and just share your questions, please feel free to do so.
I guess I go. Yeah, I just I feel like through this experience, I've been very, very teacher friendly. We've all had to be, right? We have to listen. We have to hold everything that comes our way, which has been really tough emotionally on me as a leader. I'm really worried about the changing work ethic and time commitment that folks are putting in. So next year, assuming we're more normal, whatever the hell that means these days, that these after school programs and the athletics and all these things come back to the school. Are we going to have the people that are able to actually commit that time, who are the people that they're still doing their job under these circumstances, but those are the people that are leaving, 10 minutes after dismissal, who used to stay and be involved? Are we going to get that back? And I'm really concerned about that. I don't know if anyone else has thought through that. It's just something that's been on my mind a lot.
Actually, Corey, I think I can piggyback off that because we're in a state in Arizona where we've been back live since last September. It was by choice, and now everyone's back in school. And I had a phenomenon this year, and it's happened throughout many of the other schools in the district. I don't usually have a high turnover. I'm 13 years in my school, but we lost 9 teachers this year. And out of my 9 teachers I lost, only one's going to another school. Most of them are leaving the profession, and they were my teachers who last year were all remote, and then they're coming back to schools whose trauma level is much higher than it's been before, not being in the structure school, and this year became too much for them, so they're leaving the profession. So I'm hoping I'm not ahead of the curve on that. But that's what I'm seeing in Arizona, and many of my other schools in our district that I work in are seeing the same sort of thing. I will echo this, though. I wasn't going to ask a question. I was going to make a statement. As we're talking about retention and recruitment today, I heard so much focus on wellness and meeting teachers' needs. things that don't come up in an interview at all. I don't sell my culture. I don't sell the way we meet the wellness. And I got to shift my mindset on what drew me into education and meet the needs of my teachers that are coming into the profession. So that was my really, really good takeaway from this meeting right now. So thank you for that. But we're having a phenomenon, and I see Rachel seeing the same thing.
Yeah, I am at a, public school. We have been in person, all the things, full on school. And I guess one of my challenges, because I've listened to so many beautiful ideas today, many of the flexibilities, though, that I've heard have been allowed through the charter structures that are in place at your schools. And so I'm trying to figure out like what I can take where I do have some of those constraints. I can't flex, hours in the school day. I do not have staffing allotments to have co-teachers in a classroom, and so I'm curious, and I guess just a general ask to the team would be like if there is a place where we can share ideas, perhaps in different school contexts, to be able to take and borrow and replicate and build upon.
Great. So Brian, Rachel, and Corey, there's like a theme that's coming out of here. It's just like, one, like how do we kind of recruit, right? How are we going to recruit people in? What are some flexibilities? What's the range, right? There's always a continuum within education, right? Depending on your state, the type of school setting you're in, of flexibilities that we can think about to be able to help with retention or with the recruitment. So I hear that piece. And then Corey, this other component that I think you're driving towards is like this internal drive, right? Like how do we get people to internally go back to the level of output that we want, that they did previously, right? And so the people who stayed after to do the cheerleading and the sports or just the chess club, right? Like, how do we do that when people want to like just go home and relax because they feel stressed? And so what are the things that we can think about with the flexibility around that as well? So I do know that some of this will be covered when Jenn and Mitch will be speaking. So then we have a whole nother piece around like thinking through this. And we will have breakout rooms, going to your point, Rachel, around people coming together. So you kind of making me want to push to get to Jenn and Mitch, because I think some of this will actually be covered in their part of their presentation. But I wanted to give just a couple of moments to see if Daniela or Paul wanted to just hit for like 1 minute each a response to either Corey, Brian's, or Rachel's comments.
I can speak to a few things that fit really closely with things that I've been thinking about and processing. One of them has been around, I don't know if it's COVID related or if it's who the new generation, the younger staff are. But at DC Bilingual, we noticed a big shift from, I told you I started 13 years ago. I would work around the clock and stay for any meeting and come be the first one here and stay as late as I needed, whatever. It was like a different culture. And all of the people that I worked with also did that. It was the way we ran the school, and we were in it and didn't care and didn't clock our start time, end time. We were just here. The newer generation of folks that are entering our school are not doing that. They tell me they want their hours protected. And if they start at 8, they're going to be here at like 7:55. If they end at 4, they're going to be helping with dismissal with their bags on them. And they're going to be walking out at like 4:01. Like it is what it is. It is sad. It's unfortunate. It's frustrating. I wish I could change the way in which they think about their role in the school, but I can't. So I realized that in order to get people to do more, right now, it requires paying for every single thing that we ask them to do after their quote unquote work time, which is 8 to 4. So in some of these meetings that I mentioned, having like committee meetings and proposal meetings to review and blah, 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 all of those, if they happened after work hours, everybody who participated in the meetings got paid $20 a meeting for being there. It is heartbreaking and it bothers me. And it really like hits at all of those, like those feelings of like, really, like, do we need to be doing that? But the answer is yes. If I need people to show up to the meeting and the meeting's after 4, I need to tell them that I'll pay them for attending the meeting. Same with things that happen on weekends, and same for things that impromptu, like, oh, I need you to stay to help me with the setup of that space. And there's a little extra stipend here and there. So stipends, we're just giving out like crazy, and extra pay per hour for any amount of time they stay after school. And I think that that's going to be the new normal. Unfortunately, I don't think it goes away after. I don't think it'll go away. So I just wanted to speak on behalf of that piece.
And seeing in the chat, Corey, you are not alone. And so I do think there is a shift in the way that each generation thinks about work-life balance, right? And maybe we went so hard, we didn't really quite have that work-life balance. And so maybe the pendulum is swinging to the other side. And so if everyone can give a round of applause with your different emojis, hand claps, to Daniela and Paul for speaking their truths and being vulnerable and sharing their ideas. I greatly would appreciate it. I am going to turn it over to Jenn and Mitch is representing cohort 5. And Jenn, if you guys get the main idea, that's Jenn. Jenn gets those wonderful ideas and information to you all. So I'm turning it over to them. And again, we will kind of go into these components as we shift from the panel to the session. Thank you both again.
Thanks, Michelle, and thank you, Daniela and Paul. I've scribbled a whole bunch of notes myself, and we're going to make this an interactive session, and we promise you're all going to walk away with at least 20 more recruitment and retention ideas. So we do encourage people to stay. Mitch and we support leaders in many different ways. One of the ways we do that is we run small mastermind groups, which are school leaders from all over the country who come together every other week for professional learning like this, brainstorming, resource sharing, and all of that. So we will jump right in, and Mitch just has a quick poll.
Yes, welcome everybody. So I'm going to launch a poll that asks, how big of a concern is the Great Resignation for you right now, both losing teachers and leaders? All the way from 0, not at all, everything in between, up to 5, extremely concerned.
Great, and 3 seconds more.
Yep.
Perfect.
We've got the full spectrum of concern, from not at all to extremely concerned. Maybe let's start with the people in the lower end, not at all. Maybe if anybody wants to come off mute and share a little bit about maybe why this is not a very big concern right now. Maybe that will highlight something happening in your school or district that is worth us hearing.
Hi, this is Dana from Prince George's County, cohort 11. And I selected on the closer end to not at all, because I do have teachers who stay, but I also have a very hard to staff school, and I've been here for 11 years, and culture and perks have always been my pitch for hiring. And so I've always had to front load my budget with compensation or substitutes where we're doing planning during the day. Like there's taking nothing home in my school, right? Because they're depleted when they leave here because it requires so much with the population that I serve. So I've always had to operate with that premise of giving a day off a quarter, giving you 2 days a quarter to plan your lessons. And so because that's the culture, my staff already kind of still feels a reprieve, keeping class sizes small, not having people double up when there's no one. I have a lot of support staff that can cover classes, so teachers aren't burdened with those type of things. So I feel like we were pre-pandemic type efforts here because we've always been a hard to staff school. So I've always had to lead through the lens of culture, and academics came second.
That's great, Dana. It sounds like you are ahead of the curve, right? And that you have been putting into place the pieces that a lot of us really have to be putting our energy towards right now. So thank you for those great examples. And for those, does anyone have anything more to add around in the 3, 4s, and 5s around your concerns? Anything beyond what we heard earlier from Ron and Paul and Daniela?
I can go. I put 6 in the chat. It's Corey from Baltimore. We're actually not losing anyone in my school. We're actually adding positions because of just the increased enrollment. I'm super concerned about the next 3 to 5 years about fully staffing buildings because of people leaving. I believe I saw a stat like TFA and some of the other organizations have a large percentage lower than they normally have. I also really wonder about local universities. Baltimore has tons of them, like Hopkins, really Towson's another one. All their early statistics are saying there are less people going in education. So you have people leaving, you have less people going in education, and you have people just like, I've had it, right? I'm retiring early. Like, where do we fill that gap? And that is for my school, not worried, we're good. But for all my colleagues and friends across the city and nation, I'm like, petrified for us. So
yeah, and we'll be talking about some gap filling today. Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. I'm appreciative, Corey, that you're thinking 3 to 5 years out, because that's exactly what we encourage. So what we're going to do now is something we do in all of our masterminds. Mitch and I take the topic of the day. Today it is proactively addressing the Great Resignation. And we do a lot of research and we boil that down to 1 or 2 pages. And then we do a live read. So rather than asking you all to read like a book or a chapter before you come to the session, we're all going to read it right now live. And then we're going to discuss it. That's a great thing to do at a staff meeting. So I have a 2-pager I just put in the chat. One side is about recruitment. I'm sorry, the first side is about retention and the second side is about recruitment. So we're going to ask everybody if you could share with a 1 or 2 fingers, and some people are off their videos. Would you like to read 1, the retention side, or 2, the recruitment side? Would people share with us? Or if you're on, you have no video, put it in the chat. We want to make sure we have a few from each. So 1, if you're going to read the retention side, and 2, the recruitment. Great. Dana's reading recruitment. Mayoshi's reading retention. Some other people. Okay, Daniela's got recruitment. Good. All right, we're going to read this briefly because we know you don't have a lot of time. So we're going to take 5 minutes. You're going to read it, and then Mitch is going to put 2 breakouts. And if you read 1, retention, go to the retention room. If you read recruitment, go to that room, and we will discuss. Okay. So click on that document and read your side in the next 5 minutes.
We wanted to learn from all of you. And so we knew that there was a desire for principals in all schools to have some of the flexibility, especially around funds that some charter leaders have every day. And so we worked to get a provision in federal law for some of these COVID dollars that says that any district, charter or traditional district that's receiving this money can give principals funding flexibility to be able to just say, here's a pot of money to meet the needs of your schools. Some districts have decided to do this, but not all districts have decided to do this. But any principal definitely can ask their district whether or not they're aware that they're allowed to provide this flexibility and if they might choose to do so with some of the extra money that's floating around.
That's a brilliant idea, Jackie. Yeah, definitely to ask for some flexibility, because I know some of the ideas that Daniela shared, people are like, I don't have the money. So certainly to ask for the flexibility. We're going to share very briefly a couple of the ideas from our side of the page, and Mitch will share from his side. On the retention side, the first thing Marianne shouted out was the idea of doing a stay interview to get your staff to stay. We often do exit interviews after they leave, but instead preventatively right now, start scheduling one-on-one meetings with your teachers you want to stay. Don't assume they're going to stay, and really ask them what's going well, what can I do to support you? It might be a really small thing that they are thinking of leaving over, and if you can catch them, that would be incredible. And also just showing that you care by we're talking about wellness and well-being, spending one-on-one time, your time with your teachers is a way to show that you care. And then another quick idea from Brian is to try to take things off of people's plates. Try to Marie Kondo what they're doing. This has come up, earlier. And I added that even if you can't take something off of teachers' plates, do a brainstorm and ask teachers, what are you doing now that doesn't contribute to student learning or well-being? And at least hear them out and try to work on what you can, even if the district binds you. So those are a couple of the ideas. You have the 2-pager. You can certainly read the retention side later. Mitch?
Yeah, I'll add. So Dana was sharing a little bit about just being creative and reaching out to recent retirees to fill things like bus drivers, school aides, that kind of thing, really using our networks. Interestingly, Dana is also part of a recruitment and retention office, a newly opened office that opened, did you say a month ago, Dana? They received a grant. So the fact that HR divisions are now thinking not just about bringing people in, but how to keep people, I think is a really healthy and positive shift and sign. The other Dana, I guess we had 2 Danas, also just was really thinking about this idea of reconceptualization. Like we've kind of crossed over. We've seen new ways of learning. We know that digital and virtual are possible. How could that be further leveraged to support staffing needs, right? Could somebody be brought in virtually to teach classes in hard to serve areas or hard to fill positions? Also, Shauna was talking about just raising our game professionally. And I think a lot of schools do this, but, treating, when teachers walk in, they should know that they're walking into a professional setting, a place where they can thrive and be happy and are offered water and are, this is where recruitment and retention are sort of 2 sides of the same coin. You really have to have that culture in place to keep people, and that's that same culture that will attract people to you. So we want to just pause there and take a minute for all of us to share some ideas, because there's a lot going on in your schools and districts, things that you've either seen or have experienced yourself.
So in the chat, we shared a Jamboard, which has 3 pages, one for brainstorming ideas about retention, recruitment, and then total reconceptualization. You can share your favorite idea from the 2-pager. You can share things that you're doing. We will compile these and share them with you afterwards. It's a great way to get a lot of ideas out in a quick time. If anyone doesn't, do you want to share your screen, Mitch, or just assume people know how?
Yep, I will. Give me one moment.
So notice at the top, there's 3 pages.
So there's 3 pages across the top. If you scroll through, there's retention, there's recruitment, and there's reconceptualization. So what outside the box ideas do we have? And to add a comment, you just go over to this toolbar on the left, click on sticky note, and share an idea. And it will pop up on the page. So let's have a good 4 to 5 minutes of just brain dump, get as many ideas out as we can. Jen and I will definitely organize this and then share it back out with you so we could all sort of add to our toolkits. Yes, Michelle will be sending out a survey to everybody, so please fill it out so new leaders can continue to meet your needs, support you in the great work you're doing.
Oh, Mitch, I think we're coming to the end of our time.
Indeed.
Did anybody have any questions about sticky notes or do you want to shout out an idea that you liked that's on the Jamboard before we close?
I do love all the notes about inviting basically making this a whole school-wide effort to recruit. So this is not something that just falls on the HR team or the principal, but really finding creative ways to involve teachers in the efforts to bring in other teachers.
Yeah, there's some quick ideas. You can have some pizza and do a recruitment party. Have teachers go into different rooms and record 1-minute videos of why they love your school, post those all over social media. It also reminds it's kind of both recruitment and retention, because it reminds them why they love your school. And even if you don't have money for, let's say, a hiring bonus, or for, finding a colleague who wants to come work at your school, all of your teachers want to work with good people. So really ask them, who do you send? I don't have any, you don't have to give them $500. Just send us good people so you can work with good colleagues. Really get names. And sometimes if you send out an email to staff saying, oh, if you recommend anyone, send me an email, they never do because they've got long to-do lists. But if you have a staff meeting and you take 15 minutes, okay, right now, everybody go through your mental Rolodex and send me the names and email addresses of any teachers or staff you think might want to join our school. Anything else to highlight, Mitch, before we end?
I think there was so much. I think people probably took a lot of notes during the opening conversation, and we will feed this all back out to you. Nicole, just to pass it to you, I think Michelle might have had to run, but do you have any closing thoughts before we say goodbye to everybody?
Appreciate everyone's just being open and sharing and just thinking through ideas that really work in your school and ideas that that may not work, and just being able to continue the conversation. I would encourage everyone to revisit the Jamboard and continue adding ideas. We will share it with everyone who joined us today, as well as those who registered for the session, to make sure that there's at least a space for continued conversation. I think in this time frame, there just has to be just this continuous conversation around it, so that we can make sure that there's learning that's taking place on between our entire network. We're also looking at sessions. We typically have our sessions during the evening time. And so we explored a session during the day this time, and we'd love some feedback on what that looked like in terms of being able to have sessions throughout the course of the day. We already know that we're probably going to shorten it to a 1-hour learning space for any future sessions throughout the day. And I just want to thank Mitch and Jenn, and also Daniela and Paul, for really serving as our leaders today in this very heavy topic, and thinking about something that is sitting on the minds of all of us. And I want to thank them for leading that conversation. We know that there are some nuggets that you were able to take away either from the panel conversation or from this session where you were looking at a resource. I want to invite everyone to complete the survey. You will also get this in an email. This helps us to be able to think about the types of topics, the format, and the resources that will be beneficial for you and your learning. And so I invite everyone to take a few minutes, certainly if you have time now, to complete the survey. This will also come in an email to you. I also want to share that we'll also send out our contact information if you need to reach us for additional information, and also to invite you to take a look at our QR code that talks about our upcoming events. If you're not able to take a picture of it, there's the direct link there. It talks about what events we have coming down the pike. If you're interested in elected leadership, know that as a member, as a new leader, you have a free membership to Leading for Educational Equity, executive coaching, interested in policy work and how to move into that space, all free because you are a New Leaders alum. So if you're interested in that, there's a quick one-pager on that QR code and that link tree, and you can join. It takes literally 30 seconds and someone will be in touch with you. So on behalf of our New Leaders team, thank you all for coming and joining us today. Have a great rest of the afternoon. Take care.
Thank you so much for hosting. Really an honor to be here. Everyone take care. Great to see you.
Yeah, thanks Nicole. Thanks everybody. Have a great day.